This is the Ancient Inheritance, or AI, Season 11 guide. I'll be going over the general mechanics, the best relics to choose, what element to pick, and the best unit for each element. This database will be linked in the description for anybody who wants to check it out. So for this AI, the sets are Injury and Defense. These are solid. Injury is seeing an uptick in usage with Harseti being out and all these HP scalers, tanking units. And then Defense is fine, good bulk set, especially if you're going some base speed units. So this sword is kind of rough because most of the injury units are all HP scalers, so this attack is kind of useless. It's whatever. The helm and chest are okay. I think the speed is a little bit sad because since you're using injury mostly with or against Harseti, you don't really care about the speed, so I would have preferred if this was crit damage, but this is still usable. And then this ring is technically good, but I kind of hate it because you can get an exact duplicate of this ring from Nightmare Cycle, so I would have much preferred if it was a neck, since I have 3 of these rings already. And the neck and the boots are solid. Def main would have been preferred, but HP main is still workable because bulk is bulk after all. It's just the usual tank subs that they hand out. And ideally, we roll everything into defense. We also have an unequip coming up at the end of this week, from Wednesday to Sunday morning. And usually we also have one, so I think every single AI until now, we've had an unequip during the second week, which we won't know if that's happening until Wednesday hits and we get the December schedule for unequip. So hopefully we do have one, because having an unequip is really useful for regearing or moving artifacts when we're doing the Bronco respawns in Zone 3. But no guarantees, we'll find out on Wednesday. So in this database, you can see a lot of stuff. Here's a quick list of units that I'll be going over later. And you can see the stat gains at each element level for each class, because it varies by class. You can also see the stats from gear. It's reduced, but it is still pretty valuable, especially early on when you don't have that many stats from your element levels. You can also see information on the relics, which I'll be going over later. And then there is info on all of these objects. You can see the provision costs. You can see stuff in chests, some of the other stuff. And there's also info on any enemies. You can see the Warden's Prongo info here. And there's all the rewards. And you can also see the EXP, Gold, Dream Shards, and Rage for hitting normal mobs and elite mobs, as well as your exploration level related rewards. There's also teams with videos, if that's going to load, with videos attached for killing all of the elites, as well as the Bronco and Wardens. And then there's also all the skills for all of the elites, and the skills for the Prongo and the Wardens. And we can take a look at the Zone 1 map from last AI to go over how this works in general. So you're going to enter the AI, and you'll get a certain amount of provisions each day, depending on your exploration level. You're going to pick 2 elements to focus on. One of light or dark, and then one of fire, ice, or earth. And then you're going to target mobs that you have elemental advantage towards in order to gain EXP. So for example, I'm going earth and dark this AI, so I'll be hitting ice mobs to get earth EXP, and light mobs to get dark EXP. When you first enter AI and as your exploration EXP increases, you'll get relics with various effects, which I'll go over in a bit. You can get exploration EXP by walking around and also by interacting with bags or tombstones. As your guild kills more mobs, eventually you'll collect enough Ancient Dragon's Rage to summon phase 1 of Prongo. So you can check the map to see where he spawns. Last time he spawned at the bottom, and he's light element, so the people who went dark element are going to be doing most of the damage, so everybody can contribute. Once he gets to 50% HP, he's going to hop away, and then all of the wardens are going to spawn. And the people who went fire, ice, and earth are going to want to head towards the warden that they have an advantage towards. So for example, since I'm going earth, I would want to go down here towards this earth warden, or this ice warden. And then once all 3 wardens are dead, the Prongo's second phase will spawn. So you're going to head up to where he spawns, kill him, and then the portal will appear to take you to the next zone. Defeating, or just hitting mobs and increasing your exploration EXP also gives you keys, which you can use to open chests. but generally you're only going to want to open chests that are directly along your route and not go out of your way to open them or anything, because it's more important to just try and kill Prongo as many times as you can, and then you can spend time in Zone 3 once you're done opening up chests. Now let's get into the relics. There's a quick relic tier list on the side for anybody who needs it. Let's go over the relics one by one. So first up are the 3 starter relics. You'll get one of these immediately when you enter AI for the first time. Exploration Journal is A tier. It's by far the best starter relic. It gives you 30% EXP to double the exploration EXP you gain. And this will happen when you're using bags or tombstones. You're going to want to drop this eventually once you hit exploration level 7. That's when you unlock your 4th relic slot. And at that point, you're going to want to start prepping for having more element EXP instead, and movement to save provisions or Tundra Blessing to hit the boss. But it's still really good for helping you get to that exploration level 7 point or higher, depending on when you get more relics. And it's also just way better than the other 2. So this is A tier just because it's the best starter relic and it's good for helping your progression. And then you've got Portable Telescope, which I think is kind of a meme relic. There's 2 types of fog in Ancient Inheritance. Black fog is an area where nobody has seen yet, while gray fog is an area that somebody in your guild has seen, but you personally haven't. So this relic lets you select an area in the gray fog, not black fog. Only gray fog to gain vision on it, which is kind of useless because we have the map that shows where everything is already. So you can just check that or ask around in your guild and ask what is in that area. There is another relic that lets you teleport to spots that you have vision on, but you're trading 2 relic slots to teleport around the map a little bit when there's other movement relics that you could use to just get there really fast anyways, and you have to hit mobs to level up in the first place, so it's not like you're really saving that much. So I think this is a complete meme, and it's just C tier. It's not worth getting up, especially when we have Exploration Journal here. And then there's Wolf's Gauntlet, also C tier. It gives you Tundra's Blessing, which increases your damage dealt when fighting enemies. Tundra's Blessing is good, but the requirement to get this is being under-leveled compared to what you're hitting, which isn't good because you want to be high level. So this is useless. Next up are the Mobility Relics. Bronze Ring and Wooden Doll and Vitality Brew are all S tier, and they all interact with each other pretty well. So Bronze Ring, battle and objects become available within the mobility range. You start with 2 mobility, and it increases by 1 at exploration level 4, and it's further increased by 1 if you pick up Vitality Brew. So eventually you'll be able to interact with anything in 3 or 4 tiles range, and this saves you some provisions. You don't have to walk towards things and potentially walk back. You can just go by them, and as long as they're in your movement range, you can interact with them. Wooden Doll is similar. It changes your movement to a 2-cost teleport. So no matter if you move 1 or 4 tiles, it'll cost 2. And this is really useful because there's a lot of walking in AI. So every time you teleport, you'll be saving 1 or 2 provisions potentially. And this is why Vitality Brew is really good. It does kind of require one of Ring or Doll in order to be useful. If you don't have either of them, the brew is useless. But it does increase their effects, so it's a pretty good combo with these 2. And then there's Wanderer's Pipe. So with Wanderer's Pipe, you can, like I mentioned earlier, you pick anywhere that you have sight on, and for 5 provisions, you can teleport there once a day. So this is... it's kind of hard to use in my opinion, just because you can use this to jump over obstacles or mobs to get to a different section for less provisions, or jump across the map, but a lot of areas you need to clear the mobs anyways, so your guildies can follow you, and you need to hit mobs to get EXP anyways. Plus the teleport points are unlocked pretty early now. The second the first Prongo appears, you can start using the teleport points, so the value is a little bit inconsistent, and it's too much work to use in my opinion. It's way too much planning for not enough payoff, so I just have it at A tier. But depending on how you use it, it could be really good, and it's also just kind of fun. So definitely don't get this if you don't feel like thinking. And then there's also the thing where sometimes guild chests are accessible with Wanderer's Pipe, where you can skip over a bunch of fights and just teleport there, grab the chest and teleport out. but this isn't always the case. Sometimes there's not really any benefit. Like, I think last AI, every single chest was directly behind a mob, so you had to kill the mob to get the chest, and there was no point to using pipe for it. And this AI so far, we've seen 2 chests that are the exact same case, so this might not always be the case. So it's just A tier. And then we've got the battle relics. So Ancient Shield and Conqueror's Flag are the 2 main ones, at the start at least. Both of these, when you are fighting a normal monster, it decreases their hearts by an additional 1. With Flag, it's unconditional, and Shield requires you to use 3 or fewer heroes, which is pretty trivial. Just make sure you're only using 3 heroes. And the reason this is so good is that this extra heart that gets removed also gives you EXP and Rage. So if you stack up both of them, you'll remove 3 hearts per fight and get 3 hits of EXP and Rage. Mostly EXP is the important one. So this saves you provisions. You're doing 1 fight and getting 3 rewards for it. But more importantly, if you're hitting a 1 heart mob, you will still get 3 hearts worth of EXP. So in Zone 2 and Zone 3, mobs have 4 hearts, and if you hit them twice, you would get 6 hearts worth of EXP. This is really useful, especially because EXP is a pretty scarce resource for Light and Dark, so you'd be greatly increasing the amount of EXP on the map by doing this. So these 2 are very important for pushing your elemental level up. Saves you provisions, also generates more EXP for the whole guild. You definitely want to try and get 2 of these, and then once you get your element level to 9 or 10, then you can look to drop them. Because you're going to want to pick up the Tundra Blessing relics in order to increase your damage. But first, let's look at 4-leaf clover. This makes it so that if you win a battle against a normal mob, you have a 50% chance to prevent your heroes from being unable to fight. I think this is kind of useless. Why would you bother having RNG when we have Flag and Shield? Because if you think about it, Flag and Shield are a 100% chance to reuse a hero, but only once, because it does give you additional EXP for the fight, so it's like you hit them up twice with the same units. And it also saves you provisions, because you hit them up twice technically while only using 1 attack's worth of provisions. You could stack all 3 relics, but I think it's kind of overkill, because Journal for leveling early, or the Movement relics, or the Tundra Blessing relics for more damage are generally going to be more important, and you shouldn't need that much EXP. So it's just a waste of a relic slot in my opinion, especially if you have these already, and even if you don't, you're probably better off picking one of the better relics. So this is C tier. And now let's look at the Tundra Blessing relics. There's 3 of them. Snakehead figurine when you're using objects, which is anything that's not a battle pretty much, chests, fences, teleport points. It gives you 2 Tundra Blessing levels in the next fight. So the downside to this is that you have to use an object right before you fight, but this is really good for increasing your damage numbers against the Warden or the Prongo. You're going to want to make sure that you leave up a bunch of objects around the Prongo, especially on the respawns, so you can bring this effect into every single fight. And then this combined with Broken Arrow, which when using a battle with 3 or more classes increases your Tundra Blessing level by 1. This gets you to the cap of 3. And then this effect is pretty trivial to proc, just because 3 or more classes, especially when you're hitting Prongo and you need all these different like effects, cleansing, strip, debuffs, you're going to have 3 or more classes pretty much all of the time. So it's really trivial to hit the requirement, and this will get you to the cap, which also means that Akir's Tomb is useless because you're already at the cap with just these 2, and this asks you for you to use 2 or more elements, while this entire AI encourages you to only use 1 per fight. So it's pretty much just a worse version of Arrow. And the last battle-related one is Sacred Charm, which increases the chances to hit the boss by 2. Normally you can only hit Prongo 2 times per day, and this would make it 4. I think it's not that useful. Depends on your guild really, because usually your damage numbers on the 3rd and 4th hit aren't going to be fantastic for most people. And unless your guild is completely dead and you're trying to hard carry it, then maybe the 3rd and 4th hits are useful. But generally, if your guild is semi-functioning, you shouldn't need this. And then there's the last 2 relics, which have some sort of provision-related effect. I think food supply is actually pretty underrated. For example, if you hit a level up, or you hit a relic chest and you don't see any of the relics you want, like let's say you get like Akir's Tomb, 4-leaf clover, and food supply, you should just grab food supply and just toss 10 relics at somebody. The use is, you can tap guild members or use the guild member menu and send 5 provisions twice a day. So you can just grab this relic and give somebody 5 provisions twice. And then you can either replace it immediately or just wait until you get a better relic, and it'll give a bit of provisions. The secret use for this is that if you are a slacker who has no idea what they're doing, you can use food supply to just funnel provisions into the useful people. So this is generally B tier because the S tier relics will generally save you more provisions each day than 10, but it's secretly S tier for the slackers to buff up the useful people. And there's Eerie Dish, which gives you 5 provisions when defeating a normal monster. This is, I think, kind of useless. It's way too complicated to set up, and you'd save more provisions just by using shield or flag. It's, yeah, no point in doing this. This is C tier. Here's my general relic progression during AI. I start off with Journal at the very start, and then I look to ideally grab both a flag and shield, because you want to just get this as early as possible. Technically, you don't need both until you hit Zone 2, because the mobs in Zone 1 only have 3 hearts, so hitting both would actually one-shot them, and you only get 3 hearts worth of value instead of 4 if you hit them twice with only one of these. But ideally get at least one, and then if you can't get both, then get a movement relic. And then once I hit Exploration level 7, that's when I look to drop Journal and replace it with having both flag and shield, and then 2 movement relics. You only want Brew if you have 1 ore of Doll or Ring already. And then Pipe is just for fun if you like using it. And then once your element levels get to 9 or 10, you can start to drop flag and shield and pick up the Tundra Blessing relics instead, and eventually move towards your endgame setup of 2 Tundra Blessing relics and then 3 movement ones. Now let's take a look at elements and units. For what element to go, you should decide based on what units you own and also what elements your guild is missing. You'll want a good balance of elements to be able to kill the Prongos and the Wardens efficiently. Ideally, everyone should pick one of light or dark. You can have a few people go both light and dark, but EXP is scarce on the map, so make sure not too many people are doing it. And you'll also need a few people on fire, ice, and earth to be able to kill the Wardens. If you're missing a lot of the core units listed for bossing or whatever, you might want to consider going a different element. First, for anybody who did this last AI already, let's take a look at the new units and the buffed units since the last AI. Afternoon Soak Flan, I actually don't think that she's that strong because the Warden blocks focus, which pretty much negates her S2. And she doesn't really have enough debuff uptime for Prongo in my opinion, but she could be good for bossing, or maybe there's some comp that I haven't figured out yet. And then Elena got buffed. Her EE now cleanses on her S2 instead of her S3, which gives her more cleansing overall and works really well into Prongo since Prongo only uses AoEs. Her S3 does only cleanse 1 debuff instead of 2 now, which could be rough depending on skill timings if he debuff transfers a ton of debuffs over. There's Harsetti, who is a new unit, and I actually think she's really, really good. So her S1 can be soul burned for 100% 2-turn Death Break, and on her turn, it procs an AoE extra attack, which is a 60% chance to apply attack debuff to reduce your damage. So the damage, or the AoE, helps you kill the crystals, which is useful for sustaining up. Extra attack means she helps clear Vitality phase, and if you already have Death Break, you could even hit the crystal with her S1 and hit it twice that way. And the attack down is nice for helping reduce the damage that you take. S3 is an AoE that decreases debuff duration and inflicts unbuffable for 2 turns. So being an AoE, it does help kill the crystal, and the strip and unbuffable deals with the attack buffs that Prongo gives itself. Even though her focus is blocked off and her S2 doesn't exist, she's still got incredible debuff utility plus all of the AoEs and the extra attack. It makes it so she does pretty much everything that you need in the fight, except for cleanse, immunity, and damage. The other buffed unit for Dark is Designer Lilibet. So she got a bit of extra damage on her S1 and S3, but the bigger thing is that you can soul burn her S1 for 100% Death Break for 2 turns now. She's only got 1 big cleanse on a pretty long cooldown though, so you'll probably need more cleanses or immunity buffers with her. Now let's take a look at the elements and the units for these elements. Most of the teams mentioned, there's going to be videos for them in the database. So first up is Fire. I like this element a lot because it's got good teams for Prongo, Warden, and the Elite. Just within Fire element, and not having to splash into light or dark. So For the Prongo, you're going to want Hazel, Carmine Rose, Ken, and Lilius. This team has cleanses, healing, attack buff, strip, unbuffable, death break, and attack debuff. It's got pretty much everything you need for the fight. If you don't have Ken, you can try Cirilla as a replacement. She's got death break and attack debuff. Just make sure you're not using the Vampiric Touch E, or you're going to grief your guild and you're going to get kicked. Afternoon Slope Flan could also be your replacement. It's just she doesn't have attack break, and her death break uptime is not fantastic, but she is a replacement technically. You could try using her. Next up is the Warden. The Warden team is Hazel, Haste, Tenebria, and Surmia. It's just death break, healing, and then a bunch of damage. If you don't have Haste or Tenebria, you can try Cirilla, of course. And then there is the Golem Elite. The Golem Elite, mostly you just want to spam him with debuffs and a ton of CR pushback. So the best possible team for that is Hazel, Litica, Tenebria, Haste. But the problem is that Hazel, Haste, and Tenebria are also using the Warden team, and usually there is an Elite right before the Warden. So there's a good chance you're going to want to save these three. So the alternative team would be Acades, Cirilla, Carmine Rose, and Lilica. So these four would be your alternative team for defeating the Elite while letting you save units for Warden. Next up is Ice Element. I went this last AI and it wasn't actually that bad, but it's definitely still the weakest element, I think, of the 5. For Prongo, I went with Elena, Brieg, Ran, and Sigrid. It's got Cleanse Immunity, Strip, Death Break, and extra attacks, which is good enough for clearing it. For Warden, you're going to want a healer, 2 Death Breakers, and a DPS. So the 2 teams I tried were Angelica, Rima, Stream Purity Addon, Sigrid, and Elena, Ran, Brieg, Shu. So nobody really has Ice Addon, but she's just speed down and Death Break. You could just replace her with any Death Breaker, really. For Wyvern Elite, my main team was Diane, Lua, Luluka, and a DPS. For the DPS slot, if you don't need Sigrid or Shu for the Warden, you can just use them. Otherwise, you could use Kisei or Karn even. This team is really nice because you can avoid using any of your Warden units while running this team. The main thing for the Elite fight is that you want to strip the Wyvern's special buff while potentially being blinded. So Lua and Luluka with Violin are really, really good for that. The last RGB element is Earth. And then for Earth, I'm going to be testing it out this AI. We'll see what I'm going to use for Prongo, because I have no idea right now. Though I will upload some Earth mixed with light and dark comps that a friend gave me tomorrow. Earth severely lacks good healers, so mixing elements and just slamming it with damage might be the way to go. For Warden, Rowana, Elka, Sid, and Loka, pretty much the Ice Expedition team just blasts Warden. You've got a lot of Death Break, good damage, good debuffs, and then Rowana can heal with her S2 plus her S3. So it's a pretty simple fight. You just slam it with damage. And then there is the Banshee Elite. So the Banshee Elite isn't too bad. It's just Destina or Ray, where are they? These two, with 3 DPS units, ideally ones that have some sort of cleanse. So Zahhak, I didn't put Giselle on here, but Giselle and Violet have some sort of self-cleanse, so they'd be pretty good DPS units. And then Galilius does a ridiculous amount of damage, so she's still a really good choice. And then any DPS works really. You just keep in mind that it's immune to Death Break, so something like Helga's not really that good. You can just slam it with any sort of single target DPS and it's fine. And then some other units like Caesarea, Bologna are probably useful for Prongo because Caesaria's got really good debuffs and Bologna's got Death Break, plus she can hold Bloodstone. And then there is the Light Element. So for Light Element, the main Prongo team is Camilla, Addon, Candy, and a Tywin. The team is really, really good, just a little bit RNG because Addon is your main unbuffable applier, and also if she dodges, she can strip with her S2. And it's a little bit of a problem because Steves don't really get that much effectiveness, so you do have to re-gear her, or just play the RNG and hope it lands. And then Candy, her AoE S1, is kind of your main source for killing the crystal, aside from hitting it with a Tywin S1s, which she's probably doing. And depending on how many times her S1 procs, it's going to affect how much you get healed. So you can still burn S1 to guarantee it, but that is a little bit of an RNG chance. I haven't really worked out a second team yet, mainly because I switched off Savior add-in, so I haven't gone Light Element in a while, but something like a Katie's, Ricorous, LQC, and a Stripper or something could work fine. Meanwhile, for the Elite, you just have to slam it with a bunch of damage while not using too much AoE. So something like Camilla, add in Conqueror Lilius, and a healer of some sort, like Katie's, would be good. You could also replace add-in with LQC and Camilla with any Deathbreaker, really, if you want to avoid using them, because you have to hit Prongo later or something. And then there is the Dark Element. So the main team that people have been using is Inos, Cowric, Bologna, and Paulus. And the team's really, really good, but the problem is that Dark severely lacks good cleansers and healers, so stacking up the two best ones on the same team is a little bit rough. But with Harseti coming out, and her providing so much utility, there's a chance that maybe we can swap some units around. So we'll see what the best teams look like now, but at least these 4 units plus Harseti are going to be really good for Prongo, regardless of what happens. And Kaylee Clarissa, Sinful Angelica, and Designer Lilibet are going to be our 3 other cleanser units, with these 2 having dual attacks with the highest attack ally, and Designer Lilibet having Deathbreak on her S1. And Arbiter Vildred is a pretty good DPS too because of his multi-hit, so he can kill the crystal pretty fast. For the Katie's Elite, he's not too hard. You just throw damage at him while limiting your non-attack skills to 3 at most. So something like Inos Cowric with any 2 DPS really works fine. If you want to save them for Prongo, you could just run like any sort of healer cleanser, which Dark doesn't really have that many of, but you can also just save it for later because typically the Light and Dark Elites aren't blocking any paths, they're just blocking guild chests, so you can just do it later. So that is it for the guide. I hope this helped the people who are watching it. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask in the Ancient Inheritance thread under Guidance Grounds in the Discord. Hopefully we do get that unequip during that second week of AI, because it'd be nice to save some gold when doing our last Prongo hits as usual.